Yeah, let's see that.
Yeah, Evelyn, sometimes I'm like,
10 minutes to.
I wonder
Regroup.
if it's very dark, like, I guess, cause I take after sort of, I guess, my dad, and, so we get really dark. And there are times I'm like, your feet are still dirty, she's like, Mom, that's my tan. I'm like, okay, calm down. I'm like, scrub your feet more. I can't, that's my skin. Okay, calm down.
All right, ready to roll? All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our special council meeting for Monday, November the 6th. Call the meeting to order at 6:30, and we will begin with playing of the national anthem. I'd like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the town of Shelburne resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. These traditional territories upon which we live, work, play, and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions. It is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways, and resources. We encourage residents to review the call to action information, which can be found by following the links on our town's website. A reminder to members to declare any pecuniary interest they might have with respect to any item on tonight's agenda. And before we jump in, Deputy Mayor Hall sent regrets. He's away on business tonight, so he will not be joining us. So the first item on the agenda before we get into general budget discussions is a memo from our grant funding committee regarding their review of the 2024 funding applications that we received. That memo is contained in the agenda package with that committee's recommendations. Does the committee want to speak to that before we open up for discussion?
So basically, we reviewed what was left in the grant applications with the information that was provided. We went to decision that was similar to last year's amount to be granted, and with the total budgetary amount we had, we figured that we could take 10,000 out of it and put it back into the taxation base of the budget, and still have 7,000 for any additional applications or needs that needed to come. There was no need to have a huge amount sitting there for possible additional applications.
Makes sense to me. I think 7,200's
It's
lots to
keep
keep.
additional grants or needs.
Yep. Any comments or questions? Councillor Ghishardi.
I have no problem with the numbers. I do, however, have couple of lines in the memo. I want to preface this by saying that council has no point or no right to intercede themselves into the planning of events by our service clubs. So the line that says, and request that the town of Shelburne, of Councilmember Kyle Fagan to be actively engaged with the Shelburne Rotary Club during the planning for a community event should be, this should be amended.
It's part of the policy now, though. That was my argument, right?
Okay, but that policy has to do with, if I understand the spirit of that policy, was things that the service clubs may or may not be doing that might be objectionable to the norms
Yeah.
of society. So,
Yeah.
for example, I don't know, generally flags or, okay,
Yeah.
but we shouldn't be micromanaging as council.
We're not led. No, sorry, let us,
No,
we're the committee, we.
Please let me
Just-
finish,
Well,
because I do have the
let
floor.
Council Bishardi finish his comments and then we'll let the committee sort of respond and give the rationale.
At the end of the day, I don't think any service club would recommend that an outsider from that club have any say on how any event is run in this community. That's the decision of that service club and not the decision of council.
Whoever wants to.
So first of all, it's not a decision of council. It's a recommendation because we are granting them a amount of money to them, that we have someone on there to make sure that the taxpayers' money is being utilized and not ending up with any possible waste. Let's put it that way. So the reason for putting the member on there was to oversee the spending of the money, I believe, right? And to be another form of advice. There's a lot of expertise. The reason that we chose Kyle to go on there, he has a lot of expertise in that area. He's only there as an advisor. He's only there to bring back information to council as to what's going on. And that's the only reason he's there.
So
For the amount of money we're granting them, they asked us for a grant, and for the amount of money we're granting them, we need to have some feedback as to what and how things are being utilized.
okay. In that line, there's $4,000 in kind, but no cash. So what is it? I mean,
I think there's more than,
Oh, it's not just in kind.
it's not
It
just
is cash.
in cash.
the cash for there's cash for the hampers, there's cash for the backpack, but there's no cash for the community service, the community events. In that line. I mean, I've got it right in front of me. There's $4,000 of in kind, but there is zero. Now, unless that was an error. I mean, this service club gave this town $350,000 towards the water park. And so what is it that you don't trust about? Because that's what it smacks of. It smacks of, we want accountability. We don't run service clubs. Service clubs run themselves.
It hasn't been put in yet on what you're looking at. The amount. There was amount given to them.
No.
Yeah,
No amount given.
like in the shaded part on the, right on the right side.
No funds to.
So you've given them 4,000 in kind. It almost appear, I mean, if I was a service club, I'd be embarrassed. I mean, I'd be very concerned. In fact, I think it's egregious that you don't trust me.
I thought.
Yeah, this is sort of what I spoke about when we were going over the policy.
Right,
And I said I didn't agree with the one line that said that we had input into the events.
we shouldn't.
And I agree, I said that.
Well, and that's the point of my objection to this is that.
Because I said if they were already following the requirements of the grant,
And
then
they-
we should trust that they're using the money and that they're doing it properly. And if they don't, then we have the rights to remove that.
Right.
But I was voted down.
There's no way council should have, be interjecting concerns or activities of other events.
Okay, let's just give the two committee members a second confer. Was that the intention, the way it's showing here?
It is not the intention, actually. It appears to be an oversight. The only reason to have a member of council in there would be for financial support, which it's been an oversight that we obviously missed, unfortunately, for financial assistance as well. 4,000 in kind is not justification for a council member to sit on there. The discussion that we were having was with 5,000 fiscal donation.
So the committee's intention was to give 5,000 cash as well as 4,000 in kind?
We hadn't reached a decision. Like I said, this is unfortunately an oversight on Gideon's part.
If
The
I,
intention was to give some financial aid. We did not reach a decision on how much.
Councillor Guichardi?
I mean, the Rotary Club has done, I mean, it's beyond the Rotary Club. I think any service club that has these conditions, it smacks of just not trusting them to run their events. Not every event is successful. Okay. But it's not for us to micromanage their events for them.
I think, because we did have this discussion a couple of months ago when we were talking about the grant funding policy, and I think the intention of that part of the policy initially was that, you know, if we're giving grant funding to any organization within the community and we catch wind that, you know, they're planning something that, you know, to your point, is so contrary to the values that we have as a community, it gives us some ability to step in. I agree. I don't think the spirit of that policy necessarily was to kind of preempt that and provide direct involvement in the planning process.
It also does place conditions on
Yeah.
that specific group's grant funding.
If I can
Period.
interject, thank you for reminding me, even though it's there. The decision was made to hold off on. Part of the reasoning behind that is Rotary has a policy in Pine Square. They will have grant funding come up. They will raise funds and then they will donate monies to whatever organization. If the grant funding money that comes in is the donation that they give to that organization, why would we bother giving the grant funding in the first place? What we are trying to determine by having me sit on the board, I'm not interjecting with how they're going to run the event. I'm not there to interject on how they run the event, but I'm there to literally look and watch. I want to see how they are raising their funds so that this can be a carry forward, that it's a self-sustaining.
You can't have it both ways, Kyle. You can't just pick on one service club.
There's
If
no
we
other
don't-
service club that's asking us to pay
If
for
we
the event.
don't have, I mean, why oversight for one and not for all? Why are we not assigning, you know, what I mean, like oversight to all of the other applicants? What is it about this application, this specific application, that causes you or that committee, your committee, the subcommittee, to mistrust how they spend their money? That's I mean, we should be giving them the grant if that's the decision of that subcommittee. Okay, to run an event, and then we should be hands off and trusting them. Okay, and then looking at the report afterwards.
That's just it. We don't get it. We have no idea.
So just so I'm clear, is it the intention of the committee that at this stage, there's no actual cash that goes to the Rotary Club for this community event, but if through the planning process, it's determined that they need cash, we could draw on the 7,200 that's being held in reserve, and give them some?
Yeah.
Will that be enough now, having the 72?
We only asked for 5,
Yeah, okay.
so we have enough in reserve for them. It's not that, but the point is, it gives us an opportunity to see if the need is really there.
I don't see this as being, I mean, yeah, you know, the whole slippery slope thing. Why are we doing it for one and not for all? And this is the thing. I don't, it seems that the subcommittee doesn't trust the applicants to use the funds wisely or as intended. Now, you know, speaking specifically to Rotary, they did run an event in October. They did have 400 plus people there. Okay, the funds that they did apply for last year were used. They weren't used specifically to the Heritage Festival for whatever reasons. Okay, but at the end of the day, you know, it's not for council to micromanage or to oversee a private or a service, a public service clubs, how they run their events. That's not our job.
Okay, Denise has something to add, and then we'll go to Councillor
I
Sample.
think looking at the policy is important and the intent of the policy and that role. Additionally, this is not new. Last year, the deputy mayor, as a councillor, was the liaison on behalf of council. I recall from my notes from the conversation of the subcommittee was that this particular organization had an event last year that did not proceed. And it was quite last minute where changes to that protocol or that portfolio was requested and not supported. The money was directed to be returned. I believe that it was just simply good ambassadorship, consistent with the policy, to have that liaison role continued. And that, as was explained, that if there was evidence or there was some oversight that validated the need for additional funding to support an event that's not yet funded, it could come back against the balance of the unallocated. I think that's a fair summation. So, I mean, from staff's perspective, you know, there are times which you will look at where it's warranted to exercise the policy discretion. And the subcommittee, I believe, felt that that discretion was beneficial and chose to make the motion they have.
What evidence did they base that summation on?
And again, my understanding is, as one of the members of staff in attendance, that there was specific conversation about the importance of utilizing the money for which you originally applied. And if you go back to last year's grant application, it was an application for an event that did not proceed. And then there was a request to somewhat later in the process to reallocate those funds to something else. And that direction was not supported. So I think this was just a cautionary approach, utilizing the discretion of the policy, working together. But again, it shouldn't be viewed as a negative engagement. It should be used as a partnership and an alliance and an opportunity to build dialogue. I think that's really what the intent was. And I understand certainly how you perceive things has a bearing on how you interpret them, but,
Right.
and again, I don't want to speak for the committee, and Shane is not here, but Shane was the previous liaison. So I think he ported it to another member of the subcommittee this year. That's the background from a staff perspective, without getting into what you as counselors need to digest. But certainly from our perspective as staff, this is reasonable. This is embedded in your policy choices. And if council doesn't want that policy choice, you should direct us to amend the policy and come back to you with different policy protocols.
Carrie's been kind enough to pull up that section of the policy. So it reads, if funding or staff resources, so I guess there's no distinction between cash or in kind. If funding or staff resources are provided to a community organization, the town reserves the right to participate in the planning of the event and or review the final plans and provide comments before the commencement of the scheduled event. Yeah, if the community organization receiving funding or staff resources fails to comply with the town's standard of conduct, it will not be eligible to receive funding and or staff resources for future.
But that's distinct and separate.
And if I may, and we're doing this to a community organization that funded 50% of the splash pad. That doesn't
Okay,
sit well in terms of a trust issue, you know what I mean?
Councillor Sample.
Just a couple of comments. I understand, I see where you're coming from. I understand, I see where they're coming from. I understand that, because I was gonna ask for that to be read out, please. I definitely don't think it's not a non-trust anything. It's just that, I think that, and if I'm not putting words in your mouth, there's a lot of stuff that we're missing when we're coming into the grant application pieces. And, you like budget lines, what the thing is, what's going on. I understand they give to the hamper and then all over the place and stuff like that. So, but I think we asked for books to be seen to stabilize and to show what we're doing and what they're spending their money on when they come to see the grant.
I'm wondering if,
So,
if something's been lost in semantics.
That's what I'm
Because
wondering too.
as soon as you use the word liaison, that in my mind reads a little softer than how it came across in the memo. I understand what you're saying, and yeah, I think somebody reading that, could perceive that as, we're infusing ourselves into the process because we don't trust the Rotary Club. That's not the
Right.
case, but we're saying, look,
Yeah,
Councillor Fegan, as a member of the subcommittee, has sort of been tapped to be the liaison, and we're asking that there be sort of some information sharing and communication through this process. Is it the part about the active engagement in the
Yes,
planning? Is that,
certainly, like that, the whole, to be honest with you, the whole line for me, to be actively engaged, that reads as, in my interpretation of that phrase, that we will be planning heavily your event for you, and that's not council's job.
That's not the intent.
yeah,
That's still not our. I'll pull it up as a separate motion.
Put it forward, then we change the wording.
I would prefer it to be a.
yeah, we can vote on it separately. We can vote on the numbers as they
Yeah, the
are.
numbers I have no
and then-
problem with,
And then
unless
deal
there's
with
a
that one
mistake in
separately.
that.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, because in reality, the draft resolution that's in the agenda doesn't specifically speak to that part of the memo anyways. So what I would suggest is let's consider the motion that says we received the report, that the recommendations from the committee be included in the 2024 budget, which in my mind are the financial recommendations, and that the budgeted amount for grant funding be reduced to $28,000.
Yeah.
So is there a mover and seconder for that motion? Councillor Sample, seconded by Councillor Fegan. Any more discussion just on the numbers as they are? All in favor? That's carried. And then I would enter, Councillor Fegan, I don't know, do you want to make a motion with amended language?
Sure, why don't we change the wording there so that in request the town of Shelburne have council member Kyle Fegan to be town liaison with Shelburne Rotary Club during planning.
Second that as the committee member.
Councilor Bouchard, is that wording?
I'm concerned that that still may be interpreted as oversight by the service club. And I'm also concerned that if we are doing this for one, why are we not doing, the question begs itself, why are we not doing it for all? Or, I mean, what's specific about this application in Rotary that causes the potential for them to interpret this as being, you don't trust us? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's the problem. I mean, we're not in the business of doing that.
We're not oversighting anything, as you're suggesting. All we're doing is replacing a former liaison with a different person as a liaison. As it was mentioned by our CAO, Deputy Mayor Shane Paul was our former liaison. And now, thankfully, Kyle, because of the commitment that the deputy mayor has, volunteered to be. All we're doing is just replacing. Anything? We're not adding anything. All we're doing is just replacing.
I get what you're saying, and I think that the last thing I would want to do is suggest to the Rotary Club that we don't trust them. But if this isn't going to come as a surprise to them because it's what they were used to last year, and we're just simply, replacing Deputy Mayor Hall with Councillor Fegan, then I don't think that risk is there. I mean, if this isn't something new we're injecting into the process, it's just a different person, then I'm okay with that. Sample.
Why don't we just change the wording to say replacing Shane Hall as the liaison to Vegan now?
That's
Okay.
with that.
That holds. I mean, I'm still not gonna vote for it because I don't agree with it in principle,
Okay.
but,
Then I think what I would suggest, sort of at a future date too, I mean, if we want to revisit the whole policy, we can maybe have a more wholesome discussion on that. I mean, I know we did have a bit of a discussion a month or 2 months ago about it. But maybe we need to tighten up that language or consider whether we keep it at all, we can have that discussion. I think, are you okay to kind of amend the motion to read that we're
100%.
replacing Deputy Mayor Hall with Councillor Fegan as the event liaison? I think I'm okay with that because I think it won't be something, as I say, that comes as a surprise to the Rotary Club.
okay, so who's the liaison for GET? Who's the liaison for Picking in the Park? Who's the liaison for Agriculture Society? It's still singling out service as
If you wish to liaison for the rest of them, you're quite welcome.
that's
I will vote for you to be the liaison for all the rest of them, then there's no issue at all with that.
wonderful, wonderful. No, it just looks.
I get, yeah, I get,
It just looks.
I get it.
I mean, the reality of the thing is, we are handing out taxpayers' money. The reason the policy is there is just so that we can liaison with the clubs, making sure if there's missing information has been mentioned before, or we're not quite sure what they're doing with the money, gives us the opportunity to be there, see what's going on, make sure we can report back to the taxpayers. As a taxpayer, I don't want to see my money. I don't care if it's going to a service club, whether it's going to the food bank, whether it's going to downtown Toronto being wasted. Okay, I want to make sure that if you're going to spend my dollars, it's being spent on something that is good for the town of Shelburne. Okay, that's the whole intent. And if it's good for the town of Shelburne, and if we can assist in any form or way to make sure that taxpayer dollar is being spent in some wise format, I don't see a problem with being a liaison, being whatever, to make sure it's done there. And I can go back when I'm questioned at some point down the road as a counselor. Why did you give away $4,000 to that organization and you don't even know what they're doing with it? I can say, oh yeah, sorry, I do know what they're doing with it. We had someone there talking with them, liaison with them, and we can report back and say, yeah, ABC was done. That's all the policy is saying. That gives us the discretion only to interfere, if you want to call it that way, when and once in a while. Doesn't mean we're going to interfere with everybody. Doesn't mean we're ever going to interfere again with even them. It just means once in a while, we'd like to see what we're doing with the taxpayers' dollars.
I totally agree with you, Walter. It's important to be accountable to taxpayers' dollars. Okay, however, I can also see that Rotary would interpret this as being, you don't trust us. And this is, and like I said, this is please, for me, this is the same organization that paid for 50% of that water park.
And
$350,000 went to this
And I-
town.
sorry,
on their behalf.
I was a former Rotarian.
Yep.
Okay, I've been in the club a long time. In all honesty, they would probably welcome Kyle because they think they can recruit him. Okay, like every service club, the free suppers on Thursday nights, it's a fantastic thing. Okay, they'll love it, being there. They won't look at him as an enemy coming into the camp, spy on him, or not trust him. They're gonna say, hey, chances are, we can recruit this guy, we can make him a member of our club. Okay, over time.
I guess the one distinction, because I've been thinking about your question, what makes this different from Get Outreach or, Picking in the Park or the fair or whatever else? I guess the one distinction could be that whatever community event it is they're planning, this will be the first time for that event. So Get Outreach sort of does the same type of programming each year. The fair is a known entity. I mean, it's 142 years, whatever the case may be. Okay, yeah, I should have. Picking in the Park has some longevity too. So they're all sort of known entities, but it's a new event. So there is that distinction, I guess. But
So is it mainly that you're missing some financials when you're looking over their application?
The financials, obviously, they don't have specifically what, the specifics that they said were that $5,000 were, correct me if I'm wrong, were for hiring a van and sound equipment, I believe it was. Okay. Right, so I've been in the industry. I want to see who they're hiring.
Right.
I want to know what they're spending it on.
Okay, so maybe we just need to also have a conversation with them to say we need more in-depth reporting when they apply with their.
It's not only that, I want to see.
Financial,
They didn't show us anything on how they were going to fundraise as well.
right,
With-
okay, and see, that's a requirement, right?
Absolutely.
That's a requirement of the application, so I think what we're doing is, and it's not that I wanna not give them anything, but we need to make sure that we are upholding the application process as well. If you're not submitting the information that we need, you don't get it, right? You have to submit what we need.
Carrie?
And in their particular application, they don't have that information yet.
Right.
It's still too early in the.
Because
plan-
it's
planning
I
stages.
see. Okay,
Because in the new application, we did ask for a forecast
Right.
of the timeline of how things would start. And they haven't, I believe, They haven't-
Started
they haven't-
the process.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So I guess the other part of this too is you haven't, he hasn't recommended granting them the 5,000 cash that they've requested yet. But with that new information, as it becomes available through
Right.
the liaison, there may be a further report that comes back to council that says, look, they do need an extra 3. Our recommendation is that, based on their fundraising efforts and everything else, it's warranted.
Right.
We can draw from the 7,200 reserve and give them
Correct.
so.
The other thing that we got to keep in mind is that part of our policy is that we, as town of Shelburne, cannot be the sole supplier.
Yeah, exactly.
So if
Yeah.
you don't have financial showing,
Yep.
other money's coming in, which at this point in the game,
Yeah.
they don't, because this is brand new.
Right.
So we need to see their fundraising to ensure that we are not fully
Funding it.
capital.
Yeah,
So,
of course.
so professional services would also include the renting of,
I would assume.
with the renting of bouncy castles that,
Could
entertainment and stuff like that. So,
Could be.
I mean, so they may not wish to do their summer event anymore. They may divert those funds to a different event. Right?
Suppose that, yeah. So I'll just inject as staff. So you have a process
Right.
in order to make informed decisions.
Right.
If I'm remitting an event, I should know the date, I should know my estimates, I should know the functionality of my event in order for council and through the subcommittee to determine whether or not that should be funded. In the absence of knowing that, you're making a decision with no knowledge. So going back to the committee's discussion, the past event did not proceed. There was then a redirection of that money fairly last minute, to which it was not reallocated. This is a precautionary approach, and the policy has merit, but the interpretation of how the impact is can sometimes be confrontational, let's say. However, usually in conflict, what most people will try to do is determine what they share in terms of what they agree. I think town and any event requesting funding agree they want to contribute to the community. They want to do all of these wonderful things. They want to support value. The policy allows engagement of council for reasons X, Y, or Z. And in this case, as it was last year, the subcommittee, I believe, determined that it was warranted. And then they utilized the rationalization of the policy to exercise that discretion. That should be celebrated. Those relationships and that engagement and communication. And yes, the Rotary did raise 300,000 against the $750,000 project. That fundraising involved liaison on behalf of town staff, and in many cases, liaison on behalf of different members of the community. So we were partners. There was engagement and there was conversation. And I don't think this is similar, but if it's interpreted as this way, which you should be liaisoning that it's not, work from the point of agreement and benefit and positivity. And then, for example, what they've identified is the gap can then be fulfilled, determined, and it can come back against the unallocated 7,200 to be supported. That's what my perspective would be. And I know as staff listening to the committee, and Deputy Mayor Hall is not here, that was really the positive approach, not to be confirming you as the rest of council to make a decision which they didn't feel comfortable they had enough information to proceed with. I think if I captured your,
Yeah.
because you didn't want to be recommending nothing. You wanted to recommend a solution to what they identified was a gap, and this was a solution.
And I think that's the key. I mean, I certainly understand what you're saying, Councillor Gucciardi, but I think after kind of hearing that rationale and kind of the rephrasing of the recommendation, I think basically we have two options. We either say, no, we're not giving you any cash because your application didn't meet the requirements, or it's no right now, but if you can provide us through the liaison with the information we need before your event, then yeah, we'll consider chipping it in later. And because of that, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so let's change.
And it doesn't mean it's permanent.
No,
So it's just, yeah.
it just seems,
You know, they supply the information we need for next year and there'll be no liaison.
No. Okay.
all right, I'll change that to liaison from actively engaged. I still, just, yeah.
So the new motion essentially is that Councillor Fegan is replacing Deputy Mayor Hall as the liaison with the Rotary Club for their community event.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So moved by Fegan, seconded by Bonato. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, it's carried. All right. Now into the budget. Okay, so actually, I'll let Carrie just make a few introductory comments and then we'll jump in.
Mayor. So the budget that you have before you is the same one that was presented last week. We haven't made any changes to the general operating or capital budget. So tonight, through it department by department, and then next Monday night, we will present it to the public. And when that happens, it's generally considered a budget that has been ratified by council and supported by council. At that point, if the public has any questions after we present, council can back their decision. For the last 2 years, I believe, ended up adopting the budget that evening because there was no public objection to the passing of it. So that speeds the process up a little bit and would allow it to be approved by law as early as November 27th, which is a benefit to all of us.
Kind of early, right? Maybe sort of, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and certainly much earlier than a lot of our neighboring municipalities.
Yeah, yes, that's for sure.
We haven't even started.
Yeah, I mean, other than last year, because it was an election year, yeah, we're normally pretty good at getting it done before year end, which a lot of other municipalities can't say, but anyways. Okay, well, with that, we'll jump in. So what I'm gonna suggest we do in order to try to keep some organization of the discussion is we'll go department by department and we'll do operating and capital for each department. and we'll sort of have whatever discussion we need to have for that department, close it out, move on to the next one. And then once we're done going through that, if there's any sort of general stuff or stuff that sort of came up as afterthoughts, we can consider those at the end. So we'll start with general government services, which on the operating side starts on page 4 and on the capital starts on page 3. So anything in that section that caught anybody's attention?
It was good. Dinner email today to cover all the questions that I had. Concerns there.
Any idea when MPAC is going to, do, right? Okay.
Yeah, it just seems to be one of those things they keep kicking the can down the road. And I mean, it's not gonna get any easier the longer they wait.
For the sake of the people that are watching, do you want us to explain what that is?
Sure. Who wants to?
Well, some people may not know.
Yeah, no, it's a good point because I've had that question too, you know. One ratepayer in particular asked, you know, why we as the town were charging a higher rate on her taxes than somebody across town. And I explained it has nothing to do with what we charge. We charge one tax rate.
Yeah.
On the residential class, but it depends on how your house is assessed by MPAC.
Yeah.
That determines what you actually pay. So
That is correct. And the province introduced market value assessment many years ago. I remember the year that started, like
before
a
you,
long time ago.
no, of course not. Used to do the budget with an abacus.
Well, that is,
Yeah.
Late
90s.
They did that market assessment. But what caught my eye was the fact that when you look at it, those $1 million homes are almost assessed the same as my house.
Yeah.
And, that scares me because I'm thinking, is my house gonna be $1 million and, you know, go up somewhere along the line and what are they gonna go up to?
Yep.
You know, and I got the same probable person that the mayor got in regards to the assessments from the one side of the street to the other. So I'm gonna look at it now and say, excuse me, those brand new homes are $1.5 million and they're paying the same taxes as I am, and I'm in this house and I've got this old house that's been built for the last 40 years. Why? You know, I'm not gonna get $1.5 million from my house. And the same taxes. So I get the argument and I'm the same way. I keep saying it's not us, it's MPAC that does it. And it's a province. And if you want to yell at somebody, yell at Doug Ford or whoever the heck you want to yell at, but don't yell at us. We can't put anybody.
It's basically it in a nutshell. During COVID, they do issues with keeping up with the 4-year phase in. And because of that, they're still valuing homes on a 2016 base year.
And I think part of what is causing the delay is that they're not sure how to kind of cushion that blow because it is going to be a big blow if they don't make any like structural changes to the system. But as I said, prolonging the process isn't going to make it any better unless they revamp the whole way of doing things. But
but what a lot of people don't understand is that if your assessment doubles, your taxes don't necessarily double.
Yeah.
Because it's distributed across all of the properties that are assessed and it equalizes. So I think that's some of the biggest fear, that I don't want my value to be assessed at a much higher rate because they think that, you know, exponentially it's going to double or triple their taxes. But the downfall is that then there's a lack of affordability with respect to how taxes are distributed to support the services which we deliver. So, I mean, we all know what's happening at Fieldgate, homes that are selling for 1.2, let's say, are assessed at $525,000.
Yeah.
So that's the disconnect. So market is not being reflected in the assessment. That's nothing new, but we're 8 years behind now.
And that's to your point, that, you know, somebody
So that's
just
why
bought a
you're seeing
$1,000+ home is paying
what you are.
the same taxes that you are.
The part that gets me and scares me is my house is still assessed somewhere back in the
$216.
$500,000 range, but the houses around me are selling at $1 million. I'm thinking at some point, when they do reassess, there's a $500,000 gap in there that is gonna hit me at some point in time. And like you said, you know, you've got to figure out that problem, because all of a sudden they can't just turn around and say to me, I'm sorry, you're another $500,000 more tax, you know, assessment that, you know, could be applied against you. And that will raise that amount up. And right now, especially, we're seeing that there's a struggle with mortgage rates and everything else. It's not timing is another issue for them. So, you know, until this issue, whether the economy is able to go ahead, whether people are able to go through with their mortgages and everything else, there's no way they're going to reassess the house. So we are not going to see impact of anything for a while.
They were at the plowing match and I did raise the question. And they offered me a maintenance. Would you like an assessment? I'm not sure when that's happening.
Yeah, just rip the Band-Aid off already.
And when the change does, if and when it does come, it will be our tax rate that has to change, and you will see it drop. Maybe not
Yeah.
proportionately, but it will have to drop to accommodate the higher
Right.
assessment values.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean we'll be bringing in less money, but
No.
yeah, it's just, we'll have to make an adjustment on our end. And yeah, but I think the point, you know, needs to be reinforced again. When we set a residential tax rate, that applies to every residence throughout town, regardless of the valuation that has been assigned to it. It's the same rate. So we don't tax residences at different rates. They're all applied the same rate. But depending upon the assessed value of your home, you're going to pay more or less than other people.
I think we have a video on our website too.
Yeah,
Like-
MCAP does have one that's, you know, pretty
I've shared
good,
it a
but
couple times, but
So sorry.
okay, no, it was good because that question does come up, so. So anything in that department that? No? Like I said, we can sort of do some general discussion at the end after, but we'll keep moving ahead then. So planning and development is the next. So on the operating side, that starts on page 17. And there's just one page on the capital side, on page 6. So this is BIA, planning, engineering, and economic development. The BIA is just sort of an in and out. But
You're doing- oh,
yeah,
okay.
I got it under
So-
that.
That's pretty fun to say for a 5-month study.
We did budget for that in 2023, but that study did not get underway. The FPO has committed for a portion of it.
That question, I guess I have is, really road on part of it, and is the county involved in any portion of it as well, and will they be financing?
Yeah, so I can give an update on that. So that the county has just recently adopted the transportation master plans. And Shelburne's bypass was included as a priority in that PMP. The way that it was treated in that plan was that the recommendation from county was that this really should be a provincial responsibility. So the county identified the need. and basically has through the plan, presented it in such a way as it'll now go to MTO to say, we believe, County of Dufferin, that this is something the province needs to look at and provide some solutions for, because most of the heavy truck traffic is provincial traffic, contrary to what some of the MTO engineers who were here 3 years ago tried to suggest. Yeah, the one individual in particular said, I think most of the traffic is like local delivery traffic. No. It's Gibson's, it's Chapman's, it's, Metro Toronto garbage, it's, trucks that are driving through Shelburne en route to somewhere else.
I don't think the cow and pig trucks are for local.
No, so I mean, yeah, there are a few local delivery trucks, but by and large, most of the heavy truck traffic is traveling through our community en route to somewhere else.
So we are funding this. though.
Yeah. So bottom line is, we're looking at doing a study. So again, sort of take a few steps back. The end result of the initial meetings we had with MTO and with our MPP all seem to suggest that we would need a couple of things to move this forward at the provincial level. One was to have it sort of presented as more of a regional need. That's where the county TMP comes in. So it's been identified now as a county transportation priority. And the second was, I think they wanted some more justification in terms of traffic numbers and everything else that this study will provide. So hopefully, armed with that information, we can then go back to the province and say, okay, this is what you asked for. Here it is presented as a regional priority. Here it is sort of justifying the levels of traffic that would warrant this kind of bypass. What are you as the province going to do about it?
And this is DC funded.
Yeah.
22,000 from the province. Additionally, as part of this, it's extending what the TMP did at the county level, which the mayor just described, but so the heavier lifting will go into this part of the project. In addition to the truck bypass assessment, we need to do the highway access management plan. That is critical and fundamental to the western boundary lands and that development, because of the challenges in the absence of a hamp of development accessing off of 89 into those areas. So there's 3 components to this. But again, it is the starting point to move this truck bypass review forward. It stalled, obviously, for many years, but this is really important piece of analysis.
So that's all part of the traffic plan.
It's part of our, yes, what we're doing, but it's not the county's TMP.
No, it's a part
It's
of
us doing the legwork that's required to provide the evidence to the province for the most part of what is necessary in order to create a project outline for a bypass and also deal with the highway access management plan on it. Because they're intertwined.
I wouldn't say it's stalled. There was lots of work going on sort of in the
Oh,
background,
so-
just, yeah.
Well, our side, we haven't
Yeah.
done anything.
Because we had to wait for the
You're
county to
waiting, yeah.
catch up.
Our
Now
side
that
was
that's
stalled,
done.
yeah,
and
so we can move
so
forward
there's-
now.
Yeah, there's sort of things moving in tandem, but yeah.
Yes, you can see that line item has been in there since 2022, but we keep.
And in
Through-
fairness, I mean, I think it was delayed at the county due to COVID and everything else. So I mean, I was hopeful that the county TMP would have been done before now, but it is done.
And they're doing like a Highway 10 study too, right? So that'll
Yeah.
hopefully tie into the
Yeah.
add with numbers and traffic.
Yeah.
Well, listen,
So, I mean, I should just clarify, there will not be a truck bypass in the next 4 years.
yes, yes.
So just in terms
Yeah.
of constituents that you're dealing with, that's just not a realistic timeline. Like this could be a 10-year undertaking. Capital associated with that kind of construction, let alone the routing review is monumental.
Well, I think it's been discussed for
Ever.
years, probably as it is now, but at least,
And we're moving.
yeah. But honestly,
It's
20 years.
to the public, I get,
They get
it probably
frustrated.
doesn't look like we're closer. But in terms of what the province is looking for justifications, we are miles ahead from where we were
No pun
3 years
intended.
ago. Yeah, no, pun fully intended.
We
Yeah.
are almost
Let's
there
keep on
15
trucking down the
years
road.
ago. And the be honest, it's been 20 years of my life pursuing this thing, and I would like to see it before I go in the grave.
Hang on.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Maybe still back in there.
Anything else in that planning and development?
Just the gateway signs. Can we have a little maybe update? I've had a couple of community members that have sort of said to me, like, they're in very poor condition and they're wondering when potentially we're gonna start to replace some of them.
Through the mayor, we were working with a firm that we're now continuing to work with to get delivery of what was included in the purchase listing.
Right.
Obviously, inflationary costs seem to be affecting a lot of companies' ability to deliver based on the quotes 3 years ago. So we're going to be coming back to council with potentially less elaborate gateway signs. Now that we have the development completed at the field gate end of town, we know that we have a very good understanding of where something could be placed, which is not going to be in the way of the development. We also know potentially what will happen across the street when Choice at some point will expand and develop those lands abutting or beside No Frills. So we can start doing placements. We have looked at the more modest gateway sign, if that's what you want to call it, in calling it mountains, both major destination communities, and they do not have these huge, like $150,000 gateway signs. So
Yeah.
we're going to come back with fancy and frugal,
Okay.
something that we think is functional, intends to do what you want to do, like, hi, I'm here. Those kind of things without the elaborate, stuff that goes with it.
Well,
So,
classy, I don't think necessarily has to cost a
no.
lot of money.
So we think that we're coming up with, and I think the term is not plug and play. There's like a term like that where it's more generic and you don't have to customize it, which is what's cost you a lot, but you make it attractive, functional, and location specific and, Bob's your uncle sort of thing. We're done.
Yeah.
Probably a bad analogy, but so the key will be what can we afford to use within the existing budget that we have to get 3 or 4 locations, most likely 3. And then if it came down to real push on the challenges of the cost, we would go back to 2 and then reconfigure how we get the additional 2. Okay.
Perfect.
So it's not, I'm just telling you, our plan is not the glorious,
Yeah.
grandiose thing anymore. We just can't go there.
And then, so when will that come to us, in the new year?
Yes, I would think by at least February, we'll have that information to you, if not before, on what we will be looking at and then a timing for installation.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Shardy?
Was there a deposit made on the sign back when there was initial conversations about them?
So the process that we went through was we had a significant grant through Central Counties for these signs. There was a firm that was awarded our project based on Central Counties protocol. And the commitment was made to deliver a series of signs which were designed. And the challenge that we're facing is that not all that inventory has been provided. And we're working through that process on why. And we believe, like many firms that had quoted years ago, that now the cost of that production is so above what they committed to that they would lose money on that. Granted, there's contractual, we're working through the process, but one of our solutions is to rethink the type of sign to make it more modest.
And the signs will still meet the.
Yes,
criteria?
yeah, they'll still be very, very effective in terms of welcoming you to those key points of the community.
Based on the grants we received, it's still.
We have to work within all the funding that we have.
Perfect.
Anything else in that section? Okay. So the next one is protection section. So NVCA, fire, police, crossing guards, bylaw. I will just add one comment with respect to fire. We have a fire board meeting tomorrow night. So the draft numbers that are in here are probably not final. Those will probably safe to assume that they'll go up a little bit. Staffing in particular hasn't been adjusted for COLA. So those numbers will change slightly. Hopefully we'll know tomorrow.
I do have a 12% increase in there over 2023's actual.
Yeah.
Not over 2023's budget. So what you're showing right now, I did look at the fire board agenda tomorrow night. We may be, have a little bit more in there, but the cost sharing formula for 2024 has
May
not
change, yeah.
been
Yeah.
determined yet, so that may change it a little.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, the cost sharing formula is based on 3 or 4 factors. It's calls for service, it's assessment, it's number of households. So every year we kind of look at those numbers again and recalculate that formula. So yeah, to Carrie's point, our share of the total fire budget may go up just based on our population.
I'm just gonna speak to the capital because I think it needs to be flagged. So in the past, what we've been working with on the long-term capital schedule with an estimate of about a $2.2 million capital expansion for the fire hall. As of this budget, that number has increased to 15 million. And obviously that's not aligning with our development charges reviews or our capital projections. So I just wanted to ensure that all of council had laser-eyed in on that amount. And I think it's a conversation that the board has to have. And additionally, how that expansion would be paid for and detailed in terms of land use, servicing, everything else we talked about. This actually echoes and replicates a discussion with respect to a police services need expansion and all those things that need to be capitalized, amortized and funded. And that is not something that's currently in our schedule of debt support.
And the other thing in the background to all of that is that the county or county council has decided fairly recently to undertake a comprehensive look at fire services throughout the county. So the idea is that we'll be engaging some subject matter expert to kind of look at the way fire services are delivered throughout the county and come back with recommendations as to potential changes. So that, I mean, that's not to say that there will be changes, but that's just some other additional information that's sort of hanging out in the background, which may have an impact on decisions like accommodations in the future.
As we keep going up in our percentage, some of the rural municipalities go down in their percentage. They become irrelevant. I mean, Mona was at 8% last year. They're going down again. This year is where like they keep going up. Even Melanchthon and Amaranth was 14%. I think Palmer was the only one that was a little bit higher, 15 and 16%. So when you look at the percentages and the fact that the positions are going up, and I've said this to the board, I know you don't like to hear it from me, there is going to become a point where all the rural municipalities are no longer funding this. It's the town of Shelburne that's funding this whole operation. Yet you want to have a voice on it. And it doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
And I'm going to get from somebody for that.
Else in this section? So the only capital thing there is to buy a new vehicle for bylaw.
Have we looked at leasing recently?
We haven't, we generally don't.
Leasing does, depending on the mileage that the vehicle is utilized, will it become cheaper than buying it sometimes. I'm not saying it is, but sometimes, and we have leased in the past.
Yeah.
Quite a lot, though. I think the policy changed after, but we did at one point lease vehicles. So I don't know. I'm
We
just
should look into that.
wondering if it's
Yeah.
maybe a cheaper option on our capital. I'm not saying it is, but just wondering.
So there's been general guidance from, I think even MFOA or some of the other major organizations that it's rare that leasing is a cost advantage to a municipality for corporate vehicles. Given the type of use, the risk, the amortization, in the end, if you want to get as much life out of it, purchasing it is actually more strategic, but we certainly can go back and look at on a vehicle by vehicle basis where it makes more sense to lease short term. You know, the thing with leasing even is ridiculous it is, some of our vehicles, even though they're of no use to us, they tend to have some surplus value for somebody else who can repurpose them for a less, let's say, robust environment to work in, like a deck mowers, for example. Whenever we can't use them, they will no longer function for our needs. They break down too often because we're aggressive users. But somebody who's got a lawn care equipment that does, or a firm that doesn't need that kind of hourly use can benefit from that. The other thing too is you also want to engage on the insurance side, whether the lease vehicle has all the coverage. We tend to be hard on vehicles. Lease companies don't like you bringing it back with dents and bumps and other things because they knock all those costs on you to replace those. Like, so we just like to get rid of it as is. So and we tend to be hard users by the nature of what we do, right? It's, you know, it's just like, and our bylaw vehicle is also used for dog care and transporting those animals that are in our care. So that's not usually what a lease company wants in terms of who is actually in the vehicles. Like there's all of these little nuances that you have to consider in terms of how stringent the requirements are for the lease vehicle.
Councilor Kuchardi?
So at least just, so when a town vehicle goes to surplus, it gets sold.
Tradition. It goes through gov.org
Okay,
traditionally.
so it's the same as the
It's
county.
so it's surplus for whatever value we can get it, and the highest bidder traditionally, unless there's a minimum, would actually be awarding that.
I'm aware of the
Yeah.
process. It's
Okay.
just the same as,
Yeah.
same as county.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
That's how we surplus stuff.
Do we do that before?
Anything we can surplus, yes, we formally have a circulation. It may not all be always gov.org, but there's always a formal process for how we surplus as per our procurement policy.
We did some
We have.
Ten-
we did one on the town site a
We have a
couple of years
disposal.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, did we not? It was a lawnmower or something.
I was gonna say, I think.
Yeah.
Just on the local.
Yeah.
If it's
site.
easy peasy, I shouldn't say easy peasy, but if it doesn't warrant a gov.org because we're not, you know, we don't need 19 bids,
No,
we just need 5. We have a smaller circulation.
All right, roads, public works and transportation. So page 33 on the operations budget, or on the operating budget rather, and page 8 on capital.
Sorry, just back on page 31. If I could go back. Question. 7101 bylaw labor. Like, it's up 30, I don't understand that line item, so. 109 is our year-end estimate, and then we budgeted 142 for 24, which is a $33,000 increase. Can someone tell me what that is? Are we adding a person or from 23 to 24? Sorry,
I believe it could be because 2023 didn't have
Full year.
those positions in there for a full year. But 2024 does.
So the 2 part-time started like partway through the year, so we didn't
Okay.
have to pay their full wages like from January to December. Yeah.
So that's exactly what it is.
Jennifer?
You'll also note that 7103 contracted services has been removed.
yeah, I saw that, so that was, I knew that
And
was
so
true.
that's instead of going with an additional full timer, we chose 2 part-timers so
Yep.
that we could remove the contracted services and provide in-house overnight winter parking. So the 2 part-timers are shifting out.
Yep.
And doing winter park.
So the net increase is 15.
When you take out the contract.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but no, but last year the contracted services was for overnight parking. It was
Yes.
TAG.
Yeah.
And so there was a report from Jennifer, which outlined in response to council's request for proactive bylaw, what models we could actually implement. So the key was ensuring that overnight parking had more dedicated time because one bylaw officer could not fulfill that kind of responsibility. There was a choice between adding one more bylaw officer, so we would have 2 full-time, And then that one bylaw officer would have more responsibility for the overnight parking enforcement seasonally. The decision was made that for flexibility and for greater coverage, it made more sense structurally to pilot an effort to have two part-time bylaw officers.
Okay.
We would have one full-time and two part-time,
Okay.
of which the part-time complement would have a focus on overnight parking seasonally. So that model has been successful. It is being duplicated and continued with respect to how we will administer this. So Jennifer has and her team, one full-time and two part-time, all three work here. And as was noted, they were hired interim last year. So that's why it wasn't. full.
They
So each
started like.
works 20 hours.
Okay, so,
May,
so
yeah.
like,
And there was also a COLA adjustment based embedded in this of the 3%. And then there was some adjustment from the market check marginally. So that is what how those costs are determined.
But the big difference is that the two part-time started in May.
Right, and
So
now they're starting.
2023
months.
really only shows their pay from May to December,
Q1,
and
Q2.
2024 will be the full 12 months, the calendar year. But to your point, we knock off the contract, so there's a net increase of 15 grand.
On 3 positions.
Yeah.
So those two part-timers that we have, one full-timer, daytimer, two part-times work after the daytimer till the next morning. So we have like 24-hour coverage.
So no, we do not have 24-hour coverage. They're working shift work. So right now they're simply working overnights for winter parking.
Starting at
That's
midnight.
there, likes to park when I'm not supposed to park, I can park. But I know there's no time off.
So what you don't know is what their shifts are.
Yeah.
They're not always the same.
So,
Their shifts are not always the same.
So if you want to roll the dice,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
ticket now is $40. So, and our bylaw officers do work on Saturdays, as you know, from the weekends, because we've had protest Saturdays. So the flexibility during the evening is that majority of the winter control starts at, we know what time it ends. You can presume that during those hours, bylaw enforcement for winter maintenance overnight parking will be active. And we've also recognized that the adjustment from $10 to $40 is effective in that we're getting less tickets issued because the person who was receiving the ticket no longer is willing to have 4 tickets that were at $10 for $40 is a meaningful change in behavior. So we'll see how it goes this year, but we're pretty sure and we're quite confident that your decision to adjust that fee is going to have consequences for those who choose to ignore it.
One more question for the sidewalk, for the guy who's trying those trackless and sidewalks. Cars that are parked over the sidewalk, I'll advocate for that as well, because that is another issue that we seem to have with the amount of lack of parking in winter. Issues with parking. So that-
Boulevard parking, sidewalk, on the road, yeah.
all that would be like that.
And similar to last year, we've already started the notifications to please heads up. Even for people that have all their basketball nets on the roads or they do, we need you to move those for winter. We did have snow last week and marginally is it, well, we had the trackless out. We will do a blast before the real big blasts start to hit, ironically, and we'll try to give you as much warning that, you know, we're gonna be out there enforcing winter maintenance, parking and on-street violations. So when you get the calls of complaint that the person who is now unaware that it was $10 and is now aware it's 40, you can help walk them through the process.
And it starts from
15,
50, so it's coming up very shortly.
yes, it is.
so, sorry, so I do understand all that, and I get all that. It just seems like for the money that we're spending and the revenue coming back from it is not showing me that it's worthwhile having the extra guy, you know what I mean?
Okay, so bylaw is not intended to be a revenue generating.
I get
cover.
that.
Council directed us to have 2 areas of enhanced proactive enforcement. property standards and parking. If you look at what a week consists of, 7 days a week, 24 hours, in order for that coverage, you need to have the resources and the staffing to provide the service. We're actually a very small bylaw team compared to other municipalities of our size with our character, where there is like maybe 10 bylaw, like if you look at Orangeville's bylaw complement. So this is not intended to generate revenue. It is generated, so it's similar to fire, where their lines of defense are public education, inspections, and that kind of deterrent and suppression last. Bylaw is the same protocol. Our goal is to get you to comply and to get you to change your behavior. And sometimes there's no fine associated with that process. There'll be a warning. There'll be a way to get you to comply voluntarily to change behavior, but there's a cost associated with that kind of enforcement. And my understanding from the council, previous council, was that they wanted a much higher engagement and awareness, as well as physical presence of bylaw in our community. And one person or two people cannot physically cover the hours associated with this. Working in concert with the police, we have a lot of bylaws that require enforcement, from noise to fireworks to whatever else we have, to protests, which have been an overwhelming requirement of our bylaw team, working with the OPP. So I'll leave it at that. Councils, like, this is our team. We're not changing what we have unless you direct us to do so otherwise.
And I'm not saying change. What I'm saying is that that's fine for previous council to agree to that.
Mhm.
I wasn't on previous council to agree with that, so I'm just bringing up
Absolutely.
my points totally. I'm not saying we're not gonna do it. I'm just looking like I'm not sure if what are we, maybe I just ask you this question, what are we paying a 20-hour a week person? Someone just give me a rough idea,
Okay.
or what their salary is for a year. We spent 15 grand on tag to do it in winter.
So our bylaw officers are not only doing that, they're here all year. So,
Right, so
for example, let's look at other things during the day in terms of property standards that they're doing. Look at all the complaints that we get that are filed. That bylaw team will still handle kind of requests. So if I look at intent of bylaws, a lot of our bylaws are there to promote a quality of life and enjoyment of person who lives here without it being intruded upon. There needs to be an ability to respond to that. And like I also mentioned, our expectation is that our fees from parking are going to go down because the deterrent of $40 has been
I
effective.
agree with that.
We'll still have to monitor it. We are also picking up significant new subdivisions between Highland, assumed, and we've got a lot of people in our community, as you know, that are having their homes supplemented with other persons living with them. The more people you have, the more opportunities you face in terms of neighbor issues. We've had tremendous challenges with noise and outdoor use of music and partying in certain parts of the community. We get chronic complaints from people with respect to access on certain congested streets, the way their neighbors are parking. I can go on and on, but that's what,
Yeah,
I mean,
I
I
mean,
think we're
like,
pretty
none,
good.
none of the protective services are
Revenue
revenue generators or even revenue neutral,
I
like
get
police,
it.
fire,
I get it.
crossing guards. So I get what you're saying. Are we getting value for the money we're spending? So I guess the question would be, like, is there enough workload to keep one full-time and two part-time bylaw officers busy? Or are we paying these individuals
I think
to sit around and wait? My
they can't.
initial reaction is there's probably more work than they can even handle. But
So we'll bring a report back again. And
But bylaw reports are brought quarterly. If you look in the communication sections.
Yeah.
But it'll indicate what they've been working on for the last quarter. That one is coming on November 13th.
I don't see that.
yeah. So for example, as we expand our recreational services portfolio, And I know it's not something you need to deal with, but we deal with it. The number of complaints we have to handle related to the dog park, the complaints we handle related to the splash pad. Many of those are bylaw related, trigger foundational issues where people have complaints against one another and behaviors that are not something that they want to tolerate. Those all require a process. Each complaint requires a filing, each complaint requires review, response. It is not like, honestly, we could probably have 2 more bylaw officers. Couldn't keep up. And the more proactive we become with respect to what the portfolio is, the more labor intensive that responsibility. And we have to also forget there's a huge legislative requirement in terms of the court process that is part of the bylaw process, which I know is, seems mundane and whatever, but it is a very prescriptive and training-based requirement that you need to know what you were doing in order to represent us in the court process.
And the other issues, the courts themselves, we never get back to revenue, we should be getting back.
Right.
Part of the process is on file.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, there's no way bylaw will ever be self-sustaining.
Well, I
and
didn't think it would
Yeah, it
be.
can never be.
I'm just asking
Yeah.
questions. That's
So
all.
I think the way staff usually would present this, like other protective services, it's an investment that you choose to make to ensure that the things that you value in terms of what you want the community to be reflective of, you have the tools to have that mechanism of enforcement.
Well, if we can't enforce the bylaws we enact,
Then we shouldn't
the
have
point.
them.
Yeah.
right?
And
So,
we have a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
bylaws,
Watch Netflix. Yeah, I've said that before.
so.
okay,
Can I ask you one more question while we're, since Dan's perspective?
Yep.
DocuPet. Are we getting more dogs tagged with DocuPet? Because there's a lot of dogs in this town. I'm knocking on doors.
Walter, you were like, what do you call it? Your crystal balling a report.
That report is forthcoming on November 13th. And it's
Wow.
us, we're going to be switching to document at that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're recommending it.
But I guess then the question begs, will that help us get more dogs tagged
Yes.
properly?
and we're gonna ask you to go door to door again.
And-
Vicious.
No, I have no issue with dogs. I have no issue with dogs. I've knocked on doors and I've had dogs come charging at me and I'm not scared.
So one week and you get Jennifer's report.
I'll wait for it then.
Okay.
I hope that I just. It angers me to see the amount of dogs with no tags on them. And the citizens not respecting the bylaws of the town. Even with groups, that's the other issue. We have a lot of people that complain, and you see the dogs walking around.
It's what? A bylaw? Yeah, yeah.
Well, our bylaw officers deal with the poop and scoopers.
Yeah.
Or the non-pooper
The
scoopers.
poop and non-scoopers, yeah. Okay, so we're good on that one? Okay. Okay.
We're gonna send Dan on a shadow bylaw officer day.
Okay, so back to Woods Public Works and Transportation. I mean, there is quite a bit on the capital side there, which Carrie highlighted last week in the presentation.
Jim, you might want to just come this way just in case. Any question? Yes, the answer to that.
Yeah, you're hoping to do that?
But that question, Jim, was just the sort of gradual switch over to LED lights.
Yeah, we've been kind of doing that so far on a long basis. When we get to a certain point, with, the lights that are out there, they don't think of anymore, then we've been switching over to the LEDs as we go. as part of our design criteria. Not actually in our current one, our new design criteria that we're working on would have all of LEDs in there. But we do put that to the developers. We've had no fight back from them on that, so all new developments are all LED.
So just the older sections of the town that we're having to change from the sodium lights to, I mean,
Yeah, there's high pressure sodium, some metal halide, I think, but most are high pressure sodium.
and 60,000 is the annual sidewalk amount that we have. That was my question, I think, at last council meeting.
Yes, through your worship, that's what we usually put in there, and then we do put a ream of stuff from our asset management, road needs study, roads and sidewalks in there. We review that every 5 years, and we put it on the priority list. That's updated by staff every year when we go and do our walkthrough of every single sidewalk to make sure that it meets minimum maintenance standards. But for the most part, it's on a 5-year basis, so we put more stuff in there. It's kind of a, you never know what your RFPs are gonna come back, or your contract prices are gonna come back at. So we always put a qualifier in there that we can add or delete projects as well. So we try and get as close as we can to that. We're doing pretty good for our minimum maintenance standards, so we're hoping to get to the point where we can work our way into the older sections of town where they're less than the 1.2 to 1.5 design criteria of the provincial standards. Some of them are like a 1 meter sidewalk, so that concrete for our winter equipment as well. We're gouging the boulevards, and then we have to lack with summer streets, stuff for that sort of thing in there.
Well, I guess, I hate to say this, but if the 60,000 is adequate and competent cover, I think that's what we need to do. Because even sometimes walking, they hold the sound downtown area, and there's some sidewalks there that are it's not only walking up or, you know, narrow, as you said. And I remember last year across James Street, when we did the walk for what we did to the
Orange Shirt Day,
Okay.
and National Truth and Reconciliation.
No.
Orange shirt thing.
The large church thing, that the sidewalks were, I was walking on the side of it. On down, those types of sidewalks, where a person that has a disability is really having a hard time, if you're on a wheelchair, you feel like you're gonna hit over. As you're going down. So I'm just asking, and that's the reason I'm asking most of the time, is because try riding in a wheelchair and some sidewalks, if you got a bad back and you're sitting in a wheelchair, you have no, it's not like riding in a car where you have nice shock absorbers and getting a beautiful ride. You will damage your back, even with some of it was.
So through your worship, like I said, we do assess them for the minimum maintenance standards, make sure there's no trip hazards, that sort of thing in there. But they are bumped, some of those projects are bumped out from our 5-year assessment, depending on the current need of that year. So some are more susceptible to frost or heating or tree roots, that sort of thing, if you get moved up on the list. So that it does seem to be working well, and for the most part, we are doing very well compared to some other municipalities for sidewalk repairs.
That the streetlights were set, you have a projected completion date for when the bulbs will be changed over?
Through your worship, right now, we're doing it on like a failure
Yes,
basis.
I understand that, but
Yeah, so right now we do have some on James Street, northern. Northern first, that are gonna have to be replaced in there, so I believe we're looking at 22,000 on those, but we're just going on a failure basis right now, so not an all-out rate. Replacement of all to LEDs, that would be fairly substantial.
So
that would create
would it be fair to say for 5 years out, 10 years out from replacing all of bulbs now? I just know that's a really.
It's a pretty far out time.
Okay.
That's high pressure sodium, especially the Cobra heads, they've been used for a long time, they still produce those at some of the more older specialty ones that, 60s, 70s, that area, but, we're seeing right now that failed to be replaced.
Just curious.
But I think it, assuring, as you said, assuring that any new lights that go in are LED and that, whichever ones fail and need to be replaced or converted, yeah. Rather than, have a probably, I don't know, like what would the cost be to replace everything in town if we decided to do it all at once? Like, I mean, yeah, it's just, yeah, so it's just not possible.
Retro 435 lights, and it was $500,000.
Yeah.
But it did have a grant that came with it. So those grants are few and far between for that type of lighting. You can still get funding for interior lighting and buildings, that sort of stuff, but you don't really see the LED funding anymore.
It's more expensive.
Anything else in this section? No, Councillor Sample?
Don't know where it falls, but I know we did talk about speed calming. We don't have any of that in this budget, do we?
So,
I didn't think so, so.
so the report is coming on the 25th, 6th, whatever the Monday is. Like
Okay.
in November,
Sure.
the second
Okay.
meeting in November. So you're correct, and we had put in the budget framework that the request to have us look at 2 automated speed enforcement cameras were not included in the budget. That we estimated that those costs could be up to 100,000 just for those cameras. That we were gonna come back to you with the traffic calming report, which will address automated speed enforcement, as well as anything else that we could do. I think we're sort of giving a highlight that most likely what we're gonna be recommending to you is provisions that wouldn't add much to the budget, if anything, and we look at solutions that might be ASC in 2025. Just in terms of affordability, but you have a fairly comprehensive overview of what we're currently doing, benchmarking us with what is the norm of traffic calming in other communities and what makes sense for us. In fairness, other than the connecting link, every road in this town is 40 kilometers.
Yeah.
There are communities that have gone to 30. That's something you can consider, but we don't expect there to be significant necessary costs for us to have a program for you to consider for 2024. So I just did have to report, but that's good.
It's a preview.
Preview. It's like Jennifer's preview. It's like the Oscars, the preview.
Yeah.
Don't we also have to wait for Barry to go through its timing factor with ALS if we wanted to go to something?
Yes. So right now, Barry has just launched their pilot working with LAS. Their expectation, and I think the last count, there was over 70 municipalities in the queue that would be wanting to be participating in that program. Like all of them, they're waiting to see how this administrative process that they will put in place would be offered. And everybody needs to know the costs, because you certainly want to make sure that if you're expecting this to be similar to other things as an offsetting, all the costs will be offset by the tickets, that may not necessarily materialize. You may have no revenues because you're so successful. And I think I gave the analogy before, a community like us that is at 40 is not going to have the gap unless you have super excessive speeders that you obviously don't want, like say a municipality that has quarter that's 80 where everybody's going 120. And then those kinds of revenues on those tickets, let alone racing, are generating massive recoveries for them.
Thank you.
Because this is not an inexpensive program.
At the end of the day, you hope everybody's compliant. It's.
You want zero.
Yeah, you want zero ticket, you want zero revenue. Comply.
But that's the same as file on everything else. It's not a revenue generator. You don't want it to be
No,
a
no.
revenue generator. That's not the point. But that makes sense for not putting it in 2024 budget because we don't know the numbers anyway. It's the same as what we're through the grant committee. You don't know what you're getting into.
And with the waiting list, like even if we did know the numbers and wanted to move full,
I don't think they're gonna be taking
we
anybody on.
they wouldn't have the
Q3.
capacity to do it next year anyways, so, yeah. Anything else, Councillor Bichetti?
Not specific to this, but it's just a general comment. First of all, Carrie, you've done an excellent job together on answering questions that were submitted. On principle, I do have I do have an issue with council salaries, 3%. I mean, I'm a newbie, I don't make 3%. You know what I mean? Like,
It's just the
I know it's
standard.
not, and I know in your email you said this, the actual dollar amount wasn't substantial enough, you know, to make a change, but at the end of the day, I really like to feel a little. I hate to say it, overpaid for getting an increase like that. Sure, by all means, you can yell at me. Yep.
I was on council for the better part of 9 years at $3,000 a year. We never had an increase. We never voted an increase for ourselves. It got bad as time went on, where we were so far behind the rest of the county that it was ridiculous as council. You want good people to take time out of their lives, run for council. You can't sit there and say to them, they're not gonna reimburse you for anything, you know, volunteer, volunteer, it doesn't work. So the point, we decided at one point, at least put in a percentage. We can't go to ourselves and say, look, we're so far behind, we need to put ourselves $7,000 to catch up, $10,000 to catch up. We can't do that to ourselves. We can't do that to the tax. So all this is doing is just keeping us in line with the rest of the county so that we don't fall so far behind
Right,
that we end up having at some point to make that huge catch-up gap.
which was the context of Barry's email.
I was actually just
And
gonna,
I mean, like, I just,
I'll get Carrie to sort of explain the process, the way it works now. So to Councillor Benato's point, that there was such a disconnect at one point that there had to be a huge increase to sort of bring Shelburne councillors up to par with kind of, you know, the provincial averages. And then at the same time, there was a process put in place to kind of ensure that it wouldn't fall back to that point, but I'll let Carrie kind of explain how that process has been designed.
Sure. So in 2014, we did have Ward and Upgrove do a review and use other municipal comparators similar to the town of Shelburne. So when that review was conducted, there was a substantial increase, which is an awkward situation for councillors because you're giving yourselves an increase. And I believe at that time, they adopted the new rates for the next term of council.
No,
No,
because it was one of the first things that Councillor Sample and I had to vote on.
Okay.
I wish they had, have.
and that's the thing, is like.
Yeah.
But not necessarily, but I understand, you know, maybe now that we are back on some sort of track, this is going to keep us somewhat in line with other municipalities. It's just, yeah, which is fine.
So the annual increases are now tied to cost of living, which is the same as staff increases. So the idea is essentially whatever increase we give to staff also is applied to council salaries in the hopes that, you know, we're not going to get to a point where we're, you know, so far behind the rest of the comparable communities in the area that we have to, you know.
And why it's in the budget framework, so it's known in
Yeah.
advance of the budget being presented to you.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near what provincial and federal give themselves.
Oh, no.
I guarantee you, if you sort of look at what you earn as a counselor and then divide that by the number of hours that you put in to the job, it's not gonna be
Yeah, oh, no.
a substantial paycheck, but yeah.
Can I just,
You're
what,
basically volunteers.
just donate that? So what other communities have done, I believe their staff suggest to a person who says, I don't want the increase, they say that's something you can personally decide, then you can donate that back and get a tax receipt for what you, but you will still be issued whatever you are to be issued. If you choose not to need that money, then you do with it as you see fit. You can donate it back. I think in this case, you might get $12 back.
If you reduce the 3% to 2%, yeah.
That's fine. Okay, I was, you know, something that was just. Hey, I'm new.
You may need the help on your taxes.
Yeah,
A little extra for you to give the food bank.
okay.
All right, anything else then before we jump ahead to the next one? So we're still on roads, public works. Good on that for now?
Yeah.
Okay. Next one is the exciting topic of storm sewers. Page 36. On operating and page 15 for capital. Actually, maybe for the benefit of,
Actually quite important.
yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Do you want to touch on anything in particular there, Jim, or?
Your worship, I'm not much, any major points there. We do have some new criteria coming in for, stormwater management. We applied for our first, linear infrastructure, PTA, water storm. We just got some information back today from the ministry. They want more information from us. Once that's finalized and out there, we have about a year and then we get into a fairly strenuous maintenance and, inspection program. So there will be some additional costs down the Bush Road, but, fairly straightforward for the current time being.
He's okay on that one, I take it?
Just a question, I know it was probably answered 8 years ago when I really asked the same question. I thought I see 35,000, maybe I'm in the wrong page, I'm on page 37. I'm still in good here?
No, so that's the next one. That's for
Okay,
waste.
wait.
Yeah, okay.
You want page 37, okay.
Yeah, I'm on page 37.
Okay.
I'm back after.
No, sorry. Okay, so we'll flip over to page 37, waste management. Councillor Sample.
Is that the 5412? City leaf collection recovery? Is that what we get paid in? I think I asked this before and I can't remember.
That's the county of Dufferin, CTY, short for county. So they pay us
Great,
for the leaf program, the
Okay.
town, so all the collection that the town does, the county reimburses us for labor, time and materials.
that's 100%.
Because they're not doing the work that they would have to do if they were picking it up in bags.
That's what I thought the answer was. I just couldn't remember. So I just wanted, thank
So I
you.
do a good thing, putting it up.
Just don't put it on the road.
No, no, on the boulevard, not the road.
A lot of people put it on the road.
They do.
I want.
Yeah.
Just out of interest, I mean, does anybody know, like, do a lot of other communities?
No,
I didn't know.
No.
So, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
no,
why I'm asking. I don't
Yeah.
know.
no, we are very lucky.
but
It didn't
because,
get cut, it didn't get cut out of county budget, right?
No.
but
Well, we
because we
haven't
have the
finalized.
recovery, it makes sense. If
Right.
it didn't have the recovery, it would make no fiscal sense.
Right.
And it's actually not wise, because if you have piles of leaves on your road and you suddenly get a snowfall,
Yeah.
then you have other problems to manage in terms of our small
Right.
roads. So it's
But then
worked
that'd
out.
be a job of bylaw to make sure they go by and look after that.
Yes,
We'd probably have to hire another part-time bylaw officer.
for leaf management. But yeah, so to your point, it is, I've never, I shouldn't say that. I'm not familiar with any other municipality that does this. Orangeville, oh, there you go.
Within Dufferin,
Yeah, within
like outside of Dufferin County, I
I don't think so.
know where I've lived at least has done it.
You got a bag.
Orangeville has the machinery that actually vacuums it up.
Yeah.
The other thing,
Suck.
Yeah.
that I've seen.
The vac
down
truck.
there, yeah, it looks like two tractors with.
Like a vacuum.
Yeah, and it just blows it in.
And just blows it in, they go by and sucks everything up.
Didn't we try that one year? Contracted with like one of the suction,
We
Trucks?
Vacuum truck, I think.
that might have actually been before you were here.
We do still do that in some areas where it's high traffic, like downtown and some of the more established older sections of larger trees. Just there's not a good time to run equipment, even overnight now or early mornings. So the back is a quicker way to do it. You just run the curb line, sucks it all up. And you're out of the way in no time, but
I really appreciate that.
it's not so you don't have storm drain or catch basins. But do it.
Can and I know it's a very small budget item. Is it worth us to have like for $2,000 worth of sticker sales, garbage sticker sales? I mean, how much does it cost us to?
So similarly, it ensures that the person who has one bag.
Yeah.
We're supposed to, so they come in here during regular business hours, we're not open late. We provide counter service and they purchase their. It's pretty common for municipality to support those kind of needs. And
Yeah, it's the county, for instance, or the, well,
yeah, so we just resell them.
okay, fine.
If we were upper tier or we were our own management, we would be selling them regardless.
So there is an offsetting revenue line for the same thing, garbage sticker sales.
So we buy them, we
2,000.
sell them.
Okay, I'm sorry, which number is that one? Line is that,
5407 shows the revenue,
right?
Right.
and then 7310 shows what we pay to the county to purchase.
So it's an in and out.
I know a lot of people that are moving, especially.
Yeah. No, I just like,
Yeah, so it doesn't take a lot of staff effort. Like they're $2 a tag, so you can see how many
yeah,
tags we sell.
so,
Caravaggio's
Yes.
used to sell them too.
Not everybody
Still
sells them
do.
anymore.
Do they?
That sells them,
That's right. they
Jet-
do.
so.
The variety store used to as
Yeah.
well.
I purchased them. It's, you know.
it's just
I
to
thought-
keep it, yeah, the extra bags off, yeah.
It's better than sitting there and walking around and seeing 3 bags sitting on the side of the thing, that there's no stickers on it. Yeah, I think they're Again, it goes to the Danny byline.
We're lucky if we could have. It wasn't for for kitty.
All right, so on to cemetery. So that starts on page 38 for operating and it's page 16 on capital. Yeah, so it's gonna do some road work.
Yeah.
Yes, on the capital side. Are they paved? I was trying to remember. No? Yeah,
Gravel.
okay.
You want them paved?
No,
No,
No.
Okay, it costs money.
no, I couldn't remember if there was any.
Back in the days, burials took place in the land, so some.
Oh, really?
Stones are very close to the laneways, you have to be careful when you drive them around.
So we don't want to take down to create a paving base.
Okay, that-
All right.
Oh, very. What's it mean, that we made of granite and concrete? I thought it was always made of granite, at least the one that's there,
2027, yeah.
2027.
My guess would be that maybe the original, like, part of it was concrete with granite, like skin on it, yeah.
Veneer?
Veneer, that's the word I was looking for.
The current columbarium walls are out. The sections are concreted. The only thing that's granite is the actual main door.
Yeah.
So why granite, no cement? Isn't it more expensive to go full granite than to go cement?
I think what they're finding is the concrete is integrated.
Yes.
Right.
So we're gonna end up replacing the one that's there.
No, we're going to add a new.
No, I know we're adding a new one, but at some point, if we're disintegrating cement, are we going to have to replace the one that's there?
I guess.
Yeah.
That's a question.
repairs.
Yeah, maybe at some point, do we need to budget for that as well?
And so what they're going to look at is how to keep that one with certain finishes and refinish it. As opposed to.
Yep.
Once people are insured there, the families don't want to burn
Yeah.
relocated. So they're, we'll try to keep what's there, and look at how to effectively maintain what's there.
But then that begs the question, if we were to go cement rather than granite, is there finishes that can finish it so it won't disintegrate and have something back?
I can ask that question and how about you?
Because if it's cheaper
The-
than granite, and if we can maintain it as concrete, we should be looking at that process as well. I'm not saying that that's the process we want to go, but we should be looking at every angle we can.
It would ultimately get paid for
I
through
was
the
just gonna
sales,
ask that.
though, right?
Yeah.
So,
And there's care and maintenance fund on every purchase.
I don't know if the cemetery ever pays for itself. It seems in all my lifetime, we've been paying for the cemetery as taxpayers.
yeah, I just flipped back on the operating side, so there's $6,000 set aside for revenue on columbarium sales this year.
So the very first columbarium that we bought had the cement. The second one that we bought was totally granite, and this will be the third one, and it will be totally granite. So it's only the very first one that has problems, these cement issues. So we've already bought one that's totally granite, and we're
I know,
budgeting for another one,
I know. It's just I hate to see the tax.
and not until 2027.
And I got that part. It's just the living is always paying dead.
So I'll
That's the
just,
part
I'll
that's
just
not good.
interject. So, in terms of a columbarium, it has a much higher cost recovery than say a ground burial, which has a bunch of other report or services associated with that. So whether it's the tree, now granted, it's still part of the cemetery, but usually columbarium and mausoleum are those interment options within the cemetery service that have the higher ability to cover all the costs associated with it. And then obviously you're still paying a care and maintenance fund for interment, and that is then generating back interest on the fund to help support those costs of that maintenance. But I think as Jennifer said, what they choose in terms of the structure is probably now more responsive to this environment. And we buy it, it's not something we make, it's pre-purchased.
Mhm.
And the company that specializes in that does the installation.
Things that do so.
Monuments, yeah.
Good. I would think so.
And then that takes us to the big one, recreation and cultural services. So operating, this starts on page 40. And on the capital side, it starts on page 18. So this includes all of the Parks and Rec master plan stuff that we've talked about as well. What's that?
Didn't I read something, it's just not enough money to give everything you want,
That's in year 2.
so.
So everything that we've shown you for 2024 is funded. Where we've come up short is what we've identified for 2025. Based on the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, there's not enough corresponding money in development charges. So that's what we've done is we've maximized all the projects based on year 1 of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan by park, identified the funding source. The majority of it is DCs, with some of it coming from the special purpose reserve that was established in years past.
Yeah.
So that's what would be technically tax supported.
Right.
But
So
the
that's-
majority of this whole list is DC driven.
Page
which means
19.
There's no impact on the
capital
tax
side.
supported operating budget or the tax levy.
Until 2025.
2025 is the same, where it's maximum of DCs that are utilized, but we're so significantly short.
Right.
And we would have to hopefully find other funding sources or reconsider the project schedule, because, they just announced a $3 billion infrastructure fund. Granted that that's supposed to be funded by this new bank setup, but that will be something that we would be qualifying for in terms of infrastructure, we assume, in the future.
So all of the capital projects that are identified here are either DCs,
Yeah.
reserves, or coming from the special levy.
Right.
Just one change that I need to make, on page 18, under capital equipment description, the 2 tandem axle parks trailers.
Mhm.
I've indicated they're both DC eligible. One of those is a replacement. So 10,000 will be DC eligible, and then the other 10,000 will be,
Tax.
reserves.
Okay.
when you say, sorry, capital equipment description under 2024, you got replaced 2 Hustler Zero Mores. That just comes from our tax rates.
Those ones are tax rates, yes.
Okay, so. Anything basically kind of give wise all tax coming from that tax base.
Yeah, just the two lawnmowers and the mower deck.
Yeah.
It's tax rates.
That 210,000 for equipment, 54,000 basically is coming from taxes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
Len has his hand up.
Councillor Shardy.
Two questions. One, there was some discussion about using the asphalt recovered from the highway placement on South Street. Was that with the savings incorporated into that, or was there a projection on what those savings could be?
So that's not in the Parks and Rec budget.
Okay,
That's in the operations budget. However, our intent is to use some of the, I call it the shave and pave.
Yeah.
As part of what we could apply in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan for the trails, park
Yeah,
surfacing,
yeah.
but that's not on.
okay, that's fine. The second question has to do with capital equipment. Was there anything in here, and maybe a different line, the portable stage is in much disrepair? I know we discussed repairing it, replacing it.
Through your worship, I know staff has looked at that. There is some specific criteria there for standards on the stage 2. The lead staff. They can fix that one up instead of full replacement on.
So I also know that we looked at what a comparable stage in terms of its size, obviously much enhanced capabilities. I think we were seeing it coming just under $200,000. And what we're doing right now is ensuring that the current stage, as modest as it is, it just has to be certified because stages are now covered under the
Yep.
building code. And they have to have a certain criteria that they meet. And I understand that we're confident it will meet certification and we'll be using it again for this season.
But as long as it's safe. I
Yeah.
mean,
All that matters.
Engineer stamp, that's fine.
But down the road, I mean, if we are looking at some sort of replacement, I mean, in my mind, that's something that, potentially we could look at sponsorship for, I mean,
Yep, that's for sure.
you know,
I
ex-developers,
just wasn't sure-
entertainment stage,
I just wasn't sure what line that would be coming out of.
So it's nowhere to be
No.
seen right now because it's in maintenance. As to the mayor's point, if this one ever becomes obsolete that can't be used, we would evaluate whether replacing it is even the direction we should go in. For example, it may make more sense to rent it on an event by event basis as you need it. And then we're no longer in the rental business. So third parties would have to rent their own, which is the common practice in other municipalities. They're not in the equipment rental business.
where do we store it? At the hydro yard?
Thought it was at the yard, at the operations.
Outside?
I believe it's over public.
Yeah.
Yeah, operations yard, at the back of the bay. Yeah, in the bay at the back.
Yeah.
So just,
So repairs going in can be in-house, you think, or?
Through your worship, yeah, for the most part, unless something pops up during this inspection.
Does everybody want to take 5 minutes, stretch your legs or keep going? I'm okay either way, but. You okay, Walter?
Yeah, I got sand for everything.
Councillor Sample, did you have?
so I know we've got a big list here and the items on this list. Is it of what we're looking at here is feasible to be done in 2024? Or are we scheduling this over a time frame? Like, not sure what I'm seeing, like, I mean, we spent a lot of money in 2024 based on what you're showing us here. And then I'm just scheduling wise, does it all fit into 2024?
Through the mayor, the plan right now, recognizing that it is aggressive, is that this is the 2024 project schedule.
Okay.
In order for us to meet the milestone dates for the entire Parks and Recreation Master Plan, specifically Fiddle Park in particular, we need to get this working. Additionally, a lot of what is been highlighted through the public engagement is the priorities that are listed in these parks.
Okay.
So the plan is over 5 years. We're gonna max
Right.
out the whole development schedule, but we're starting with trail connectivity. We're starting with the phase 1 of Fiddle Park, to build up the capacity to get the artificial rink or skating path in, and playground enhancements. And yes, so for those of us that are gonna be knee deep in this is gonna be an exceptionally busy year on the capital side, which is a really another benefit of having a budgetary process that's done early, because then we can get out of the gate on the contractual stuff that we need to issue to move these projects forward. Okay, but I should say too, it obviously comes without a surprise, I hope, that when you're doing a major renovation of a park, there's going to be disruption at some point in that fiscal year or that annual calendar year to event and presence. Like, you cannot undertake massive renovations and changes without one summer in particular being disrupted. So once we get to that point, we're going to have to then look at where potential events need to be relocated on an interim basis, whether within the park or to supplemental locations. Because we can't rip up Fiddle Park and do all of this work and think everything can be status quo. No disruptions for that. This year's no problem, but heads up, it will probably impact 2025.
So why not warn the people ahead of time that are planning the events that
We,
will be that?
so once you approve the budget, we will have an understanding of our project schedules that will be starting, and those kinds of engagements will be undertaken.
Okay.
I mean, stating the obvious, but that's a pretty impressive list
It's huge.
to do in 1 year, and to have all of it DC eligible or coming from reserves, and not a single cent of that capital work coming from
So
taxes.
we're gonna be busy.
Well, yeah, and I think that's Dan's point. Like, as long as you guys are okay with taking on that workload.
What it means is that staff, including myself, are gonna be realigning to focus in on some of these priorities. So, for example, the manager will be, tied at the hip to this project list. I will be working with him. Hopefully, the position that we've recommended through the Parks and Recreation Master Plan can help us alleviate some of the day-to-day stuff and start building that capacity and work with us on processes, because this is all new, and this is it's a significant list, but it's an impressive list, which I think will be celebrated by the community, similar to how happy people are with the splash pad, the docking, the tennis courts. The list goes on. Like, this makes a huge impact on their quality of life.
Makes it all.
True.
Counselor
So
Sample.
that just leads into my next question, or my item, is that the Parks and Recs labor that you have, the new person you want to hire,
The coordinator.
is that what they're doing?
So we have a utilities operator. We had 3 new positions identified in the budget framework:
Correct.
Parks and Rec special events coordinator,
Okay,
a laborer in utilities, and an operations analyst.
okay. So our Parks and Recs entertainment, is that what you just said?
So Parks and Rec coordinator and special events. Actually, it's called Recreation Programs and Special Event Coordinator was the formal title.
And we're bringing them in 2024.
Q1,
And
Q2.
they're going to, I'm not sure if the parks are gonna be all disrupted and what's going on, what is gonna be their role?
Okay, so
Understand that's,
in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, there were probably 5 or 6 pages devoted to outlining what this position would need to do.
Okay.
It's based on the recognition that the town's role in recreation in particular is non-existent. There was an identification that there were capacity issues and that there was an expectation of responsiveness by this town to certain recreational needs and assessment. So, for example, there are capacities in terms of use not being maximized. There's no engagement with third parties that need space to rent. So whether it's in the school board, whether it's in the CDRC, one recommendation was that the town should literally rent space at the CDRC and respond to programming need. Additionally, there needs to be an extensive review of rates and fees, which we've not been able to get to what this position was tasked with doing. They were to move forward a lot of the recommendation in the Parks Recreation Master Plan is the facilitator of this. And the goal, at least in terms of what the Parks and Rec Master Plan said, is that eventually we need to evolve to a community services department, which would actually align with your original direction and recognize you were on council at that time. But through the service delivery review of the county, there was a suggestion that board governance structure needs to be reevaluated. And if it became more of Parks and Recreation or Community Services Department, there would be, you know, a different capacity in how we deliver service. That's what the job will be doing. It's right now based on starting in Q2. And the other thing that was identified, even though it's not Parks and Rec, it was actually mentioned, was that we had done an entire feasibility study for Grace Timpling Hall. It was recognized that being a rent hall for hire is too reactionary. That we need to be more progressive and more proactive in terms of filling this place and utilizing it. Even without all the upgrades that were identified, it still has enormous merit for utilization. That role, the position would actually be part of that. So instead of us waiting for you to come and rent from us, we would actually schedule entertainment, book it, and you would pay us. And I think what's a small reflection of how successful that can be, and no discredit to the great job that the Arts and Culture Committee did and the team, but having us manage and create a monthly exhibit has really, I think, improved.
Yeah.
And it's not that the volunteers just didn't have maybe the time, but we are seeing great response from that. And we feel that that is just one example of how this hall can also be, the momentum can be captured. So this will be exceptionally busy. And again, if you want us to have outdoor recreation programming, if you want us to look at more capacity in here, rates and fees, working with third-party groups, working with the town of Orangeville with respect to indoor aquatics and making sure that that non-resident fee is known and getting people there, that's what it is. It's building and starting from ground zero. But again, everything that they were to do was outlined in the Parks and Rec Master Plan.
Well, I know it was. I'm just,
Yeah.
the reason why I'm asking the question is because not a lot of people spent the time to go through the Parks and Recs.
Yeah.
We did, and just making sure, listening.
So to your point, which is a good one, the capital side and the park development would not impact this position in terms of what they would do. There would still be capacity with what we currently have in terms of existing parks that won't be disruptive. The majority of it, though, is building the program to go forward.
Okay.
So if, for example, we know that there's certain programs that need to be run indoor, we're going to find the facilities to either run them ourselves or more likely align those groups that can run the program with the space that's available for them. But we will be, let's say, for example, we'll rent it and you'll book it with us. And then you're guaranteed that portfolio is available to you.
And that may be in-house or out-house, like out of town.
Yeah, so if you're group A, B, C, and you come in here and you're sort of struggling on where can I actually run my program? Trying to navigate between all of these users, we will create the space inventory for you. So you want to run program X and we can say, okay, the town has now access to X, Y, Z, whether it's school board, whether it's internal at CDRC, you book with us. And then so we're almost a community development model.
Correct.
Right. So what we're hoping to do is increase use, increase activity, and increase connectivity.
Okay.
Through the town facilitating those relationships, as opposed to us being the person or the group that delivers program, right, and staffs it.
Right.
Like, so I think what we heard is a lot of people, they don't know where to go and what space to get. And they're just frustrated.
Oh, we hear that all the time.
And to that point, it's not so much that the space doesn't exist, it's that
It's
they
not
don't know where to
access.
find it or,
Or
you know,
they
how
don't-
to access it. So.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that it seems you seem to get a lot of hog time when you go into the school and ask them, or go to the school board and ask them to rent it, and they're like,
So what
so
we're,
that's gonna help, that should help with this, because you guys are coming in and going, we're doing it now, right?
so we're hoping that we could be almost the liaison ambassadors, that we can help facilitate your ability to get access, that we can ensure that those that need, so we would say, okay, 20 groups need this. What do we need to make sure you have access to run whatever you need? And how do we create that mechanism to support you? So again, a community development approach, as opposed to delivering it ourselves, right? We're there to help you. And if that doesn't work, then we would move into directly delivering it and being more responsive, like a standard municipal rec and parks department.
To go along with that, will you be working closely with the CDRC then?
Yes, so if, for
Or are
example.
you just looking at vacant space there, and go, this will.
No, sorry, but we need to find out, first of all, are you delivering it,
Right,
right? And if it's being delivered, then there's no need. If there's need, but the space is not being utilized, what space opportunities can we actually make available to the community? To ensure that whether it's for a meeting or for a yoga class or for whatever, that they have the space available to them. And what it may mean, to be honest, is if you hear that some of the space rentals are cost prohibitive to some, and that's a negative for you being active, then hey, if the space rental is $50 and we think it's subsidized, then we pay 50, but they pay 40. And your investment is you're offsetting those costs by $10. Like that's one model too.
right, okay.
'Cause
Cause where we're hearing the hang up when it comes to this type of stuff is always insurance. You know what I mean, so they're trying to hold stuff going on at the CDRC, well, CDRC doesn't hold the insurance for them, well, they do in a roundabout way, but.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So then we'd have to look at how that structure would be looked at, because I mean, insurance is an unfortunate reality now.
It is, and I get that, so,
So it's just making it the most reasonable that you can.
Yeah.
And how that structure could be.
Yeah.
Worked through.
because that was a big complaint at the budget meeting for the CDRC at the last one, was discussion of how do we get people into these rooms to rent them when the atrocious insurance cost is prohibiting them from doing it because they can't afford it. They can't bring in the money to do the rental and the insurance. So,
Excuse me, Dad, if I want to rent a room for a meeting at the CDRC, I have to have insurance.
depends what you're doing. Depends what you're doing. So if you're holding a yoga class, yeah, you're gonna need it because there's stuff going on, right? So there's different things for different going on. If you're holding a party, yeah, you're gonna need insurance.
Hey, I understand for a part.
So it's different. If you're holding a meeting, then as far as I know, there's no cost for insurance. You're just holding a meeting, you know what I mean? But if you're holding an exercise activity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So for example, a community group, let's say. Sikhs, for example, wish to hold a community group in the CDRC as a community gathering, whatever. There's no insurance for that, right?
as far as I understand it.
Okay, because I think there's some confusion there as well. Yeah, out in the public, not understanding that some of the events are probably no insurance, and some events are.
And presumably,
There is insurance that they have to get building insurance, like we have to. Cause they're coming onto other properties, so if something ever happens, who are they, like, you know what I mean? There has to be something going on for that. And I'd have to specify to understand how much it is for that compared to that, cause it's set by the insurance companies. So that's what the big discussion was at the budget meeting this last week for the CDRC, was understanding how can we get these groups in here to rent the halls, to do all this stuff when costs are high.
this position can probably help.
That's what I'm
facilitate
asking.
that
That's
too,
what I was
that,
hoping that position is gonna help.
Because to your point, like it may not ultimately be the cost that's prohibiting somebody from doing it. It's just, they walk in and there's a whole list of requirements thrown at them and they throw their hands up and say, it's too complicated.
Yeah.
If this person can kind of streamline the process for everybody.
And conversely, if somebody wants to rent a room at CDRC and, have a high impact aerobics class or Zumba class, and somebody, doesn't, injures himself or what have you, or worse, has a heart attack or something, there's gotta be insurance there. That they're responsible, what I'm saying, not the arena's responsible. but the-
Right, so it is subsidized because it's on a rider for the CDRC,
Yeah,
but it's still,
still,
it's still a high cost.
Well, that's still gonna apply also to schools. They're not gonna let you come into the gym.
Well, and that's what I'm hoping this position is doing.
Yeah.
That's why I asked the question, the contacts and getting moving forward with that and understanding that. So not getting into the deeps of it, I just want to understand that where some of that was going, that's all. So. Yeah, because I had a big accent. No.
This is a pretty accent.
It was.
It's
But
one-
I draw a half face. I love it.
I think staff hit the nail on the head though, like on the budget presentation, the year of the park. You know, like, yeah, when you look at it, that there is major investment into our parks and, you know, if we do that without providing kind of the staff resources that are gonna be needed to keep that stuff going, we're probably being short-sighted. So it becomes that capacity thing and the value for the money that we're spending. So if we're going to put an emphasis on parks, we've got to make sure that we're providing
Yeah. Well,
staffing.
I totally understand that.
And as well, they will be assisting with special events. So hopefully as a committee resource, because the way we're structured right now is whoever the staff liaison is, you're also literally doing special events.
Yeah.
Working with the committee, that's just not sustainable.
Is there future or will this position possibly take up Summer Soccer Club, the Shelburne Baseball Club, like, yeah.
Take it all over.
Yeah.
That would be the shift into the model
But
where
yeah, I'm
it's
just
like,
curious, that's all. 'Cause
That would be a significant
Yeah.
organizational change
That's
with
huge.
respect to, I mean, there's no municipality that runs those organizations,
Portugal used to.
used to.
there's,
Well, I think Orangeville took it over, didn't they? When we went to the Parks and Recs, wasn't when we went down to that meeting when I was on council before?
Yeah.
They didn't run it?
Yeah,
Cause I thought there was a bunch, they took it over because there was a bunch of non-paid fees. I misunderstood then.
usually it's understood that those organizations that are usually provincial sport organizations or subsidiaries of have boards, have a whole realm of different accreditations and how, whether league, whether they're rep, there's this whole
Oh, there is.
governance
Oh,
model that,
I know.
I mean, other than doing like what you call in municipal rec, so you have non-can skate programs where they're not certified, you could have
swimming.
different instructions that don't have sport related criteria. So you don't have to, you know, meet these certain thresholds to be qualified. That's like, I mean, you could have instruction for how to play T-ball, but you wouldn't run the T-ball league, right?
Okay.
That's a bad example, something.
Well, I
but,
got it,
yeah,
I got
Pretty
you.
good example. That's
Right.
fair to say.
Learn to be a ballerina,
Like Parks and Rec in Orangeville, they do like the
but
little,
not
you know,
dance.
dance programs and stuff like that, but they're not. Yeah.
So is it a happy face now? A happy face?
It's the one that's like, yeah.
Anything else in this section?
That includes page 44,
You want to?
Yep.
yes?
Yep.
So just so you, staff is aware. The budget is for CDRC is not approved yet, it's coming, but it was a 4%, not a 3%. Tried to get it, but we pushed it back, so they're coming back. So. Last time we did this, I think you told me we were.
Yeah, we should
Very always
use
puts-
12.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
All
think
She put in 12.
Yeah.
3 highlighted to remind myself to change it. Because I do show 12.
Showing that 24 over 23 is
Mhm.
12, yeah.
So you're good.
Yeah, but you're awesome with always putting it higher, just
Yeah,
because we
because
never really know.
when I read the line 7370, it says no final budget given from the CDRC, then I showing 3% increase over 2023
Yeah.
actual.
I think I meant to change that.
Yeah, and then when you look up in the actual
up here.
year over year change,
So as long as we're covered, we're okay, but it's going back. That forward.
Yep.
Hopefully.
all right, anything else on those before we jump over to water and sewer? I don't think will probably take long. Yeah, that's.
The Victoria Street cleanup, I know that we kind of already went through that area, but are we anywhere close to finishing that?
Through the mayor, we continue to work with the consultants on the cleanup related requirements. We'll be bringing a report back to you probably in early January or late January on a status update on where we are. And hopefully then can move forward with the sale of
The
this
sale,
property,
yeah.
but will be.
Right.
I can tell you there will be a change in the approach.
Right.
With respect to what the end purpose or end use will be.
Okay.
Okay, we want to, Carrie has included $100,000 more in the 2024 budget for additional costs we're incurring. We're hoping that will not be anywhere near that. And that the process will be concluded with respect to how much money we're going to have to spend in order to then recoup something.
I was just gonna say, it's like we break even,
Um,
hopefully.
we will not break even. But we'll maximize to the best of our ability, offsetting what we spent to date on recovery and reinstatement of this property.
At this point, is it more beneficial then for us to just hold on to it and utilize it for something else, or?
We'll certainly in the report provide you with what options could be reconsidered and what makes the most strategic sense with respect to the end use of that property. But until we have the next phase of this review, which we've actually just received today in terms of costs and what that process will entail, we are not ready to bring it back to you yet.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Did anybody have anything for water and sewer?
I don't think so. I mean,
So I'm
again,
I do have one, nothing on this. I'm okay with all this. I'm just trying to, when I look at this sheet, put on my desk tonight.
Yep.
Sanitary sewer percentage rates 34.56%. What does that mean? It's going up 34%?
No, so this schedule that I've given everybody.
Yes.
Is our development charges.
Okay.
And this is the balance that we have in each of those service
Okay,
areas.
okay.
And so when someone makes a payment on their development charge, that's the percentage of their payment that goes to that service area. This isn't something that you see very often, so I just wanted. to provide
Yeah,
it so-
exactly.
Yeah,
I had
that's-
some questions on it, that's all, so
Yeah.
I see, so
And
that's,
I
that's
also
good.
included the reserve, more detail about the reserve.
That's the
Yeah,
big one. that-
Yeah, that's the big one, yeah.
that's just more for information. It's not something.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I didn't have the problem, just.
So nothing on,
It's not going up $7,000.
nothing on water and sewer then?
pretty straightforward.
Right.
Yeah.
Any final comments, or are we ready to take this one to the public?
Well.
I mean,
If I was to say anything. No, it's really good. I will speak to it if I can. It's really good. I appreciate all the work you guys put into this. This is like really, really good. I did have some late night reading and some early morning reading, trying to get through it all and everything. pretty self-explanatory. My questions weren't meant to anything. I wrote the information out to the public, that they can see this. You never like to hear an 8% increase. No one ever likes to hear that, you know what I mean? So we're doing 5.
I was just saying, like, it's only 5.
It's 5, I get it. So, yes, so I
But-
appreciate everything you guys have done. This and this 5% is, because I was gonna say we should try 4, but appreciate everything you guys done. It's good.
The only comment I'm gonna make is I remember former mayor Van going to 0% for years and years and years. And then when the time came for things to be done in Amaranth because it was falling apart, the increases were so high that the residents just, so no, 0% do not work.
Oh, I guess, yeah.
Be there every year. Nobody likes to hear 5%. Everybody looks at the percentage, doesn't look at the reality of the actual dollar.
The dollar.
When you look at it, maybe in my case, I'm not sure where I fall in typical homes that were presented at the presentation, but even $104 at the end of a year, what in comparison? How much do you spend at Tim Hortons, Starbucks, or wherever else you go for your coffee or for all your luxury goods? Compared to.
I spend enough
Say,
with the bus.
Because I got a 5% increase. I got to throw it.
Well, that's
Now
just
you
it,
can't go
right?
anymore, no.
And that's the thing,
Yeah.
and I get that, and I just,
Yeah.
people need to understand too, is that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what, like. you Guys don't work for anybody except me. I did not get a 5% increase on my wage, I did not get a 3% increase on my wage, you know, so you've got to go somewhere else to get your funds, right?
Yeah,
That's what we-
understandable, and I'm stuck on pension, so.
You are,
Yeah.
so you're
Yeah,
the same,
I'm
you're
in
the same boat,
In
Yeah.
the same
it's not
boat, right?
fluctuating
Yeah.
out, right, so.
Yeah, we don't get the increases either, and, yeah, Chuck never seems to have, but at the same time. I like to see this move on at the end of the street, I like
Yeah.
to see equipment in the parks, I like to see all the different
Absolutely.
things happening, and there's a cost to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what the resident has to understand, there is a cost for everything, we went door to door, we were told by a lot of residents what they want. And everybody says, I want, but at the end of the day, I don't wanna pay for that,
Exactly.
but I do want it.
Oh, absolutely,
As long as
it's
somebody
gotta
else
come
pays
somewhere,
for it.
right?
Yeah.
It does.
So
I just
this
think
is the
there has to be a
reality,
balance.
there is a cost to you know.
And our job is just to create a healthy
job.
balance.
Our job is to take the phone calls. and-
So that it's, you know, you can still have the Tim Hortons and, you know, not just stop paying bills. 'Cause-
Well, and I think, Walter, your point is right. I'd like, you know, the notion of zero-based budgets or zero, you know, tax increase
Yeah.
budgets are,
It makes. no
I mean,
sense.
it's completely irresponsible. You know, and I know I've said it in previous years' budget processes, but the way I look at it is, you know, if you're not at least increasing your budget at the rate of inflation.
You're falling behind it.
So what is it that we're now providing that you're willing to give up?
Yeah.
So you start there.
Yeah.
That's not adding anything new.
Yeah.
So for us to come in, you know, with a 5% increase in the inflationary environment that we're in. And accomplishing all of that stuff that's in the budget, I think is nothing short of miraculous. So kudos to staff.
I just add and remind that 2.8% of those increases are not within our control. So within the
Or-
2.8 is not us.
Yeah.
So that gives you really what we are controlling,
Sure.
which is significant. And as I just sent to the mayor, and I think some of you have commented because you talked about our unique lease process.
Yeah.
There are other things that the standard of service in Shelburne is very high and may actually provide services that are not provided in other municipalities. But that's what your community has come to expect, and that's what is important. And they're willing to pay for that through their taxes. And if they're not, those costs could be removed, but I don't think people would be happy not having that service that they've become accustomed to.
Sidewalks, snow removal.
Sidewalk,
That
snow
is one
removals,
good example.
that's
right?
always
That's
been-
not, I mean, many municipalities do it. We have a lot of snow here, but there are municipalities where that responsibility falls on the property owner.
It does.
Yeah. when I lived in Wasaga Beach, I got a lot of snow in Wasaga Beach and I had to shovel that sidewalk. So, yeah, so I get that, and that's a thing, and I did make a note on that. So that maybe we need to look
Side
at some
the
of
ice.
these.
It's another
Some of
action.
these items, you know what I mean, because, and maybe that's what we need to put back out to the public too, is that, you know what, like, this is huge, like, is it worth what you're seeing, this too, right, so.
These are unique.
What would it cost that individual to, in either time, because
Yeah.
time is money as well, to clear their own snow or to hire a service to remove that snow? I think they're getting a better deal by the town.
Yeah.
Than even investing in a machine, you know, if you're doing your own investing in a snow
Yeah,
blower.
if you look at what we just paid for
Oh, I agree.
practice and all that kind of stuff, what we're paying for it.
It's huge. Great.
You can't put it quite that way because I don't have a sidewalk, but I still have to in my driveway.
Yeah, you do.
I have no choice. I have to invest in that snow blower. And the guy across the road who does have a sidewalk still has to clean his driveway. And unfortunately, he still has to have a snow blower. So at the end of the day, that is, the convenience is that that sidewalk is clean.
Yeah.
Before you get out of bed,
Yeah.
in some cases, to go to work. And making sure, not in our area. That's
Hey,
what-
Williams-
I helped them out because I cleaned the sidewalk in my area.
Even in terms of
But it
liability.
allows those school children to
Yeah.
get
Yeah,
school
to school,
safety.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is more my thing, you know, it allows them to get there safely. And once they do clean my area, after I've tramped through early in the morning, I can walk my dog reasonable and walk safely myself around the block.
And in terms of insurance, right?
In terms of insurance, it makes no, if I fall down from Dan's house, I'm still gonna sue Dan.
Know that.
But if we weren't doing it and it was up to the homeowner,
Can you imagine?
you'd still sue the town too.
Oh, I'd sue the
So-
town and Dan,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So,
yeah, it's just natural you do that.
yeah, sue everyone.
You sue everybody.
Damn lawyers.
and see how much
Well,
money-
and you do, and I get that, and I know we do it, and it's one of those things that we cover off, that we do because of the schools, it gets kids to schools, and we don't have to worry about it. Because you know 90% of the population is leaving at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to work.
Yeah.
You know, they're not gonna
They're
shovel
not
the
time
sidewalk before they
before they
leave, they're just
go.
gonna hightail it out of the driveway and go.
They don't even
So-
clean the driveway half the time, they haven't got the time.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying, there's no time to do it, so they're not gonna clean the sidewalks.
Yeah.
So, Okay,
Okay,
very good.
well, so with that, can I have a motion to direct staff to take the proposed draft budget to a public meeting on November 15th? Counselor Donato, seconded by Counselor Gushardi. All in favor? Carried. All right.
It's next Monday.
Yeah, it is. 3 in a row. And a motion for confirming bylaw. Counselor Sample, seconded by Counselor Wagner. All in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn, moved by Counselor Wagner, seconded by Counselor Donato.